All right, good morning, everybody. This is Judge Groner in the Third Circuit Court, County of Wayne, State of Michigan. It is Wednesday, December 7th, 2022, a day that will live in infamy. And we have been going through a docket. We have a motion for an injunction that's up, and we're going to now call that case. Marciana, please.
All in case number 22-012-091 CB, William Collins versus National Association of Real Estate Brokers et al.
Right, who's here for plaintiff?
Good morning, Your Honor. Philip Hamilton on behalf of the plaintiff.
Defense?
Good morning, Your Honor. Zachary Jugan on behalf of defendants.
Okay, Mr. Hamilton, you have a motion on behalf of your client to ask this court to issue a preliminary injunction, and so you may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. First of all, I appreciate the court taking the time to hear us this morning. I will try to be as brief as possible. And I also recognize as with all injunctions, the extraordinary remedy and relief for which we are requesting by way of that motion. It doesn't, I don't take filing an injunction lightly, but given in this situation, which we're dealing with, when it involves an election, even if an election of an association and a smaller organization, but nevertheless a national organization and an organization that's been active for quite some time, I think it is important. I don't want to reiterate what happened or what I've alleged in my complaint, Your Honor. The court has already read that and read the response and answer, Your Honor. But this is not that complicated, I don't believe, of a case. My client, William Collins, was pursuant to a notice to the Region 2 membership and chapters of the NAREB, National Association of Real Estate Brokers, that there would be a meeting and an election on June 2nd. Mr. Collins put in his application, and that application is filed with the national board. And the national board then lets the regions know, in this case, Region 2, who's running, who put in their application to run for office. There were two applications prior to the June that made the deadline. The deadline was in June 3rd to submit your application, June 3rd, 2022, to file your application. The National Association, from what I understand, had two individuals who wanted to run for the RVP position, the regional vice president position for Region 2. That was Mr. Collins, my client, and one other individual by the name of, I believe, Clara Lyons Devon. Those two people were announced to the membership. Those two people were on the ballot at the June 14th election. There was a vote in person, as it had normally been done. As far as anyone can go back and remember, there was never a virtual election for any Region 2 meeting, including maybe despite COVID issues back in even 2020. So in 2019, 2020, 2021, 2022, this present year, all the elections were held in person, as was the June 14th election. My client was elected by those members present on June 14th from Region 2. The vote tally, from what I understand, was 34-8. 34 members voted for Mr. Collins. 8 members voted for Ms. Lyons Devon. Thereafter, between June 13th and the swearing in, or excuse me, June 14th and the swearing in on at the national election on August 6th, there were no issues that were raised, or at least that were raised to my client, if there were complaints raised about any type of improprieties. My client goes to the national convention, where on August 6th, he is scheduled to be sworn in. And on August 6th, he, along with all the other RVPs that were voted in by their respective regions sworn into office. They were present at on August 6th, it was a Saturday, and there was what they call an installation ceremony. My client stood up with all the other RVPs that had been voted into office and sworn into office by none other, as I mentioned in my complaint and my motion, by an attorney who is also sitting as a state representative. So the point that I wanted to make there, Your Honor, is that if there is any one person who should know the consequences, the ramifications, and the significance of an installation ceremony wherein the votes are certified, wherein people are sworn into office, it should be a state senator and attorney who should understand that. And that individual was an individual by the name of Gerald Neal. When I read the response or read the response to the complaint, I find it somewhat incredulous that they even deny that happened. Like, that's not a figment of my imagination. That's not a figment of my client's imagination. That's not even a legal argument, Your Honor. It is something that occurred. I even showed them a picture of my client with his hand up being sworn into office. And through all that, Your Honor, through the election on June 14th, all the way through that ceremony, and even through that night, there had been no issues raised with my clients about any election improprieties. The first time that my client was apprised of any alleged election improprieties was the very next day on August 7th, when he went in to be seated or to be take his place at the first board meeting for everyone that had just been sworn into office. At that time, he was told he wasn't going to be provided his seat. His seat was not going to be recognized. Okay, that happens. And they're supposed to say, okay, they say, we're going to get back with you within a week or within 2 weeks. My client followed up the same night to ask what the process was, what would occur. And as I've indicated in my complaint, Your Honor, and in my motion, and I don't want to rehash information that the court has already went through and read and understands. My client repeatedly asked for information relating to why he was refused a seat. The response he got back, crickets, Your Honor, nothing. The board attorney never got back to him. The executive director never got back to him. The president never got back to him. No ad hoc committee ever got back to him. I just find it quite bizarre that they refuse to recognize the seat, but then refuse to identify any actual allegations and to tell him any reason why he was denied his seat. Then all of a sudden, they on August 26th, they issue a notice that they're going to have this new election in October. All along, Your Honor, again, no explanation from anyone as to what the allegations of elections improprieties were, Your Honor. From my understanding, at least what's been maybe represented in this hearing in response, that there are apparently 3 written complaints. I don't know exactly what those complaints are. I do know one of those 3 comes from the actual individual that was running and lost. So I don't know the legal term for a candidate being unsatisfied with losing, but the word salty comes to mind because she was unhappy and dissatisfied with her losing the election. So, okay, she's gonna complain. I didn't hear about any any of these alleged complaints in the responsive materials that were alleged at any point in time, either before June 14th or even after. So I don't know what the actual basis is. Just as I have a duty, Your Honor, to not plead naked allegations and make allegations without any basis, without any merit, there has to be some defense. There has to be some explanation, some source of information to draw upon, other than to say that there were just election improprieties, so we're going to have a new election. There is no basis for the defense, other than them saying.
All right, well, let me get back to you, but let me hear your response. So Mr. Jugan, obviously there's a timeline here, and I'd like you to maybe, if you don't mind, kind of just tell me where plaintiff's attorney is wrong in his facts. And let's try to pinpoint that. So, I mean, I would assume that you would agree that there was the initial election, what did take place, correct? What would that date be? June 2nd?
June 14th, Your Honor.
Okay. Do you agree there was an election?
Yes.
Okay. Do you agree that Mr. Hamilton's client won that election on June 14th? Did he get more vote? Did he
We
get
acknowledge that he received more votes at that time and place, yes.
Okay. Do you agree that he went to wherever he went on August 6th? Where did he go, Mr. Hamilton? Did he go to some city?
There was an annual convention for the
Where?
national.
Where?
That was in. Hey, give me 1 second, Your Honor. I should know this offhand, but it was a national election to be taking place in Tampa Bay, Florida.
Okay, so Mr. Jurgen, do you agree that the plaintiff was in Tampa Bay, Florida on August 6th?
We agree that he was present
Okay.
in Tampa on August 6th. Yes.
Okay. Do you know why he was there? Was he there to get like some beach, to go to the beach, or was he there for business?
I cannot speak to that, Your Honor.
Do you disagree that he was sworn in?
Yes, we do.
You disagree. Okay. And so was there a convention held that were any other officers? What happened there? Was this a convention? Was this a company convention?
It sounds like there's a factual dispute here as to what actually happened at
Well, I
this
just
convention.
asked you a question. I don't need you to explain your answer. Just tell me, was this the site of the, convention where the national board met? I mean, I think that's what Mr. Hamilton said, correct, Mr. Hamilton?
That is correct, Your Honor.
All right. So do you disagree with that?
No, Your Honor.
Okay. All right. So you agree he was there. My battery's running low. Why isn't my battery running low? Hold on a second. Okay. Sorry about that. Okay. So Mr. Jugan, and I'm going to let you talk. I just need to get the facts down, because if we can't even stipulate it, was anyone sworn in at that convention?
Yes, Your Honor.
Other members?
Other members, my understanding is other regional vice presidents as well.
Okay, but he was not sworn in.
Correct.
And do you know that based on what? Documents, deposition? How do you know that?
That has been relayed to us by the board of directors, that the individuals who were elected were listed off by this installment officer, Mr. Gerald Neal. It is
Okay, so he was not sworn in. Was any explanation given as to why he was not sworn in, if that's your position, your client's position?
On that date, I do not believe that he was advised as to why he was not being sworn in.
Okay, so he had won the election. No one told him anything since the election. He shows up to this convention in Florida to get sworn in. Mr. Hamilton's saying he was sworn in, and obviously, if he was sworn in by, there's no recording of the event? There's nothing? It's weird. Is there a secretary that takes notes? Is there a video? Is there anything that sort of, memorializes what happened that day?
I do not have anything in my possession.
Mr. Hamilton, do you know of such a document, a video, anything that would sort of take down what happened, right? There's a secretary that writes like such and such happened, right?
Your Honor, we haven't reached the discovery phase of this case, so I don't know. I would presume, though, that at a national installation ceremony, there would be a secretary taking notes. But I would say, just kind of maybe to shed some light on this situation, I believe the argument may be that Mr. Collins's name was not read off by the installation officer who was the attorney in charge. So I think that's a little, I guess, we're fighting over a not even the technicality. Yeah, my client's name wasn't read off because none of the RVP's names were actually read off. They are the names individually don't get read off. The everyone stands in place. The installation officer says everyone stand in place.
Okay.
Voted in.
All right. Well, let's move.
Collins.
Yeah. Well, let's just move forward. I mean, certainly, if he was sworn in, Mr. Jugan, that might pose a problem, right? If he was sworn in, to just say we're going to do a new election sua sponte without if he was sworn in, would you agree that might pose a little more of a problem for you as far as just removing him once he's sworn in?
I agree that would be problematic, but we're not conceding.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Well, that's okay. And again, maybe there's some dispute there, but if he was sworn in and he became, I mean, officially, a regional vice president, whatever the title is. Okay. All right. But go ahead, Mr. Jugan. So I've asked you a lot of questions. I didn't mean to put you on the spot, but I'm just trying to get the facts down. So your position is what? That he won the election, but that what? The election was tainted in some way or was improper? I mean, what happened? Why is it that, go ahead.
2 days after the June 14th election, the defendants received multiple complaints about the lack of transparency about the election process, notably that the members weren't advised until 24 hours in advance of who was running. There was ambiguity as to whether you needed to be in person, whether you could do it virtually or not, the timing of the vote. There was no information on the election process. After receipt of these multiple complaints, defendants appointed a special committee to investigate the validity of these complaints. That committee and that appointment had occurred prior to this August 6th swearing in date.
Well, it sounds like for what? From the day of the election till August 6th. So it's like what? 7 weeks go by and there's no disclosure that there might be a problem for this plaintiff? Nothing? Not like, hey, by the way, there's been some complaints and, we just want to let you know because you won the election and nothing is told to this person? He just goes to Tampa Bay, gets either sworn in or not sworn in, but he's not told about this problem that you think you have or this decision that's made by some star chamber committee. I don't understand. How is that? First of all, how is that respectful? I don't understand what the mindset is. To me, it sounds like someone pulled a fast one. Doesn't make sense to me. Where's due process? The guy wins the election. If you think there's something wrong with the election, don't you go to him and say, we got a problem, Houston? And then he can get counsel or he can figure, but instead he hears about it, August 7th? That, oh, I'm sorry, we have to do another election. And then there's no discussion with him as to what this means. When was everything explained to him as to what happened? I'm trying to be fair to both sides. And I don't know if I'm going to issue the injunction or not. It has separate, might have separate other issues, but am I missing something? I don't understand how an organization can run this way. It just seems so disrespectful at best. Tell me, fill in the blanks for me and tell me why I'm wrong.
So sitting here today, I cannot tell you whether or not Mr. Collins was apprised of the improprieties prior to the.
You think Mr.
August
Hamilton's lying to you?
I'm certainly not saying that, Your Honor.
Okay, I mean, obviously he wasn't there, so I mean, his client could have lied to him, I guess, but is there any kind of,
I have no evidence to dispute that allegation sitting here.
in other
today.
words, are there emails, anything in writing that was sent to Mr. Collins from June 14th till August 7th?
I do not know that
anything?
answer.
You don't know?
I
Wouldn't
do
that be
not.
the first question
I
you'd ask your
didn't-
client?
I do not believe so. Sitting here today, I do not have any documents
And
showing
what's your,
communications.
okay. Who is your client?
It is the
Is that
board of directors for
who was on today?
That was two people. William.
For you?
I'm sorry, Your Honor.
Oh, William Collins is your client, and then Maya Smith is,
She was the former regional vice president for Region 2.
okay.
I'm sorry.
All
I
right.
didn't interrupt.
So, no, it's fine. You have to apologize. All right. So I'm just, Mr. Jugan, I know you think I'm beating up on you. I'm not. I'm just trying to get to the facts, and I don't, this is the strangest thing I've ever heard of. I just can't believe an organization would treat one of its members, albeit maybe even a democratically elected member, because now they get complaints, and based on those complaints, they have a committee, a Star Chamber committee, and they just sua sponte, without any due process to Mr. Collins, just say, we're doing another election. Are those the facts?
Yeah, I would disagree with the characterization of that, but
Well, why don't you, then you tell me how I'm wrong. Just tell me.
I would say that Mr. Collins did receive due process because there was another election that took place where all members were properly notified.
But why do another election? I mean, it sounds like Donald Trump. Let's just do another election. I mean, it was wrong, right? What does he say all the time? I was elected. Let's do it again. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't understand. I don't understand. That's due process. Was there an explanation given to Mr. Collins as to why there's another election?
I don't know, Your Honor.
You don't know, but that's due process.
Our position is that defendants were acting pursuant to their authority to act in the best interest of the association. After receiving multiple complaints about the lack of transparencies and the improprieties with the first election, acting in the best interest of the association, the special committee looked into these complaints, determined them to be valid, reported back to the board of directors.
Is there a jury demand here? Mr. Hamilton, is there a jury demand?
I don't believe so.
I do not believe so, Your Honor.
Mhm. So, Mr. Hamilton, you want an injunction. I got to beat up on you a little bit. It's only fair. What's the irreparable harm to your client?
Your Honor, I believe it's the fact that my client, he's already suffered part of that irreparable harm. He was elected to be on the board and to have a vote and to have a say and to make his, for what he was represented for, to make those, votes and act in behalf of Region 2. And that's what they voted him for. And he is not able to do that at this point in time because they've effectively kicked him out of office and removed his seat and effectively let someone else take it. And that wasn't what people vote for. What's the point of voting? What's the point of running for a board seat if every time that someone isn't happy with it because someone complains about it with no other evidence to
I mean, Mr. Jugan, I guess my
entirety.
question, my question, Mr. Jugan, is what were the improprieties? Was it ever determined that there were improprieties and that this is a grave injustice that he was elected? I mean, what, I don't understand complaints. I don't understand what did the board determine that this election was somehow an improper election? I mean, what determination was made? How is this different than any other election that they've had? Do they have it every year?
They have it every year. The complaints were centered around the fact that the process was not clear. It was not made clear to the voting members that they needed to be in person on this date to cast a vote.
Weren't they always in person?
That is my understanding, yes.
Okay. Was it I don't understand. So if they didn't go in person, they didn't vote. So I don't understand. So the complaint was what? They wanted to do it virtually?
They wanted to do it virtually.
Okay.
There were allegations as to the actual process done in person, improprieties regarding the actual election process.
Well, when was this election? I mean, when was it scheduled? Was it scheduled the day before? Or when was this? I mean, was this announced to the members? The election is going to be on June 14th. When was that announcement made?
June 13th with
Was not.
Wait a second. You're saying that the first time anyone knew about an election was June 13th?
the first notification, I cannot speak to that date. The notice regarding who the nominees were went out on June 13th. And there was no
for the election on June 14th.
Correct.
And that was put out by your client.
That was put out by the Region 2 election committee, not by defendants.
Region 2, but that's same. I mean, that's who normally does it, right? It's not anything unusual. That's their job, right?
Correct.
Okay. So they put the names out the 13th. Everyone's given the names. Then elections heard June 14th. Okay. When are the first complaints coming in, and who was the first person to complain?
We received a complaint on the 16th of June.
From who?
From Vanetta Hawkins.
Is that the person who won the next election?
No, Your Honor.
Oh, did you ever get a complaint from the person who won the next election?
We did, Your Honor, yes.
Who's that person?
That is Clara Lyons Devon.
Okay, and what was her complaint?
Multiple complaints. One, the lack of notice, or aside from the 24 hours in terms of who the nominees were, the fact that it was unclear that members had to be present at the meeting in order to vote. And then there were also complaints from her that the voting process kept changing throughout the meeting, that, it started with index cards on the table, then there was an official ballot passed out, and ultimately a final count was never given.
So are you suggesting Region 2, which is not your client, I assume, correct?
Correct.
Are you suggesting that they screwed up?
I'm going off what
why aren't they a party to this suit? Maybe we should bring them in too.
Your Honor, I'm going off of what my clients have represented to me.
So Hamilton, you probably think they did nothing wrong. That's why they're not a party. They did their job.
I think they did do their job. And Your Honor, just to make this quick note about notice, I attached to my complaint and motion that notice about the June 14th meeting went out May 14th, 30 days prior.
Okay, were the candidates' names there?
We didn't know the candidates' names by then. They had to apply and to the national board to put their name on the ballot by June 3rd of 2022.
Okay, and they did?
And
Clara, and as long as they did, they would be considered.
Yeah, and they were considered. And I don't
Region 2 put the names out the day before.
They sent out at some point in time, they let my client know after June 3rd, because I don't know, at some point in time after they get the names from by June 3rd, by the time the applications are in, at some point in time, they let Region 2, then RVP know, and then
how many people were for this? Just two?
Just two.
Oh.
Ms. Devon.
So those two names were put out there the day before.
That is correct.
Okay, so Mr. Jugan, so ultimately, coincidentally, perhaps, maybe not coincidentally, the other candidate who lost is the one who won the next election. Are those the facts?
Yes, Your Honor.
Interesting. Just a coincidence. Huh. Okay. So in prior elections, what is this? Every year we have these elections?
That is
correct. So can we go back to last year? What happened last year in the election? Was it any different? Did people put their names in by a certain date and then the names are submitted?
From my understanding, this has always been the process as long as there's been this has always been the process. You put your name in by a certain day. Then the national board lets the region know who put their names in, who applied, who's qualified. And then the names are put out, and then it's in-person voting at the regional meeting.
Mr. Jugan, do you have any reason to believe that that's not how it was done in prior years?
I do not, Your Honor.
Okay, and of course, year before there was COVID, right? Correct. COVID's been around for a couple years. So if there was an election last year, then COVID was still around, correct? I mean, we were in the, and there was no virtual voting, correct, Mr. Hamilton?
Excuse me, I missed your.
There was no virtual voting last year during. Okay.
There was never any virtual voting.
Okay, and no expectation of virtual voting.
And I think that what goes to that very point is that if you look at exhibit, I believe it's exhibit E of my complaint, that is the actual flyer that goes out to the chapters in the region, and there's nothing ambiguous, at least in my humble opinion, there's nothing ambiguous about that this is going to be an in-person meeting at the Oriental. Not sure why something is still called Oriental in 2023, but nevertheless, Oriental Grand Lodge in 37 Fulton Street, New York, New Jersey. There's no link to a Zoom or a meeting or any indication that there's going to be anything other than this in-person meeting, which is the same way the national does it. They don't even have a virtual option to participate or vote in person either. So,
all right. Well, Mr. Jugan, are you, so what were the problems? So you're saying that one, the names were what, the day before the election?
Day before the election.
The two names. There's only two names.
Correct.
Okay. And I would assume when people put in, they might reach out to some of the people who are voting to say, hey, I put my name in, please vote for me. Probably happens a lot, right?
I would assume so.
Yeah. So I would assume that I put my name in, I would let everybody who could vote know by email. Hi, my name is David Groner. I'm running for this. Here are my qualifications. If you don't know me, I'm the greatest. I got references. Vote for me. I'm sure this idea that people didn't know, I don't understand. I'm sure those emails or those phone calls went out well before the day before the election. I mean, a good candidate would do it. And if they don't do it, shame on them. But I guess I'm trying to figure out, where's the injustice? What is it that was determined to undo this election? I still don't know what happened in that star chamber, in that secret little meeting there that took place. Because I don't know. And Mr. Collins doesn't seem to know. Nobody seems to know, except for maybe your client. I don't even know if you know. Do you know?
We pled our response to the complaint, and we outlined our defense. Again, this committee focused on the lack of notification as to the need to be in present. That the invite that Mr. Hamilton referenced, was it ambiguous? There's no mention that you need to be in person to vote.
Is there any mention is there ever a mention you have to be in person to vote in any prior years?
I cannot speak to that, Your Honor. I know in 2020, at least, the Nationals did their elections virtually.
But it probably said, if you want to vote virtually, here's how you do it. Correct?
Correct.
Okay. Okay. So I'm really grappling with this one. I don't really understand what happened. I understand I've been told, but at the very least, I'm appalled that your client, Mr. Jugan, didn't have the decency to confront Mr. Collins, explain to him that there's a problem. To me, it's just, it makes no sense. Unless they just wanted to get rid of him and put this other person in there for some reason. But what was the vote when he won, Mr. Hamilton? 38 to something?
I think it was 34-8, Your Honor.
34-8. And the second election, what was the vote?
I think Mr. Jugan's in the best position to answer that, but I think
Jugan?
it was closer, but it was.
It was 36-30, Your Honor.
So, and I think that's important to understand, Your Honor, this is understand why. Because now they're doing a virtual election wherein more people are participating in the process. But from what I understand, Your Honor, now there are more members who have been recruited to join who voted in the second election that did not vote in the first election. So if they wanted to do a second fairer election, you would think that they would at least limit it to those people who voted in the first election. Not open it up, add new members, allow effectively a new voter registration period, and then expand the pool, and then. Well,
I don't know that that's what they did. I think Mr. Jugan, I shouldn't speak for him, but I think he might argue that they weren't added later. They were still able to vote, but they chose, well, they didn't vote because they allegedly thought that it could be that they had to go in person and they didn't want to. I don't know if it's new members.
That may be true too, Your Honor, but I'm saying again, and I know I can't retroactively, or I guess I could at this point now go back to amend my complaint. But what I'm saying, what you're saying is true now, and I understand what Mr. Jugan may say that these is just more members from Region 2. But what I'm also saying is I have some information to suggest now that there are new members of Region 2 who after June 14th registered to be members of the organization, who then participated in this second election. If you understand, if the court can understand my distinction there.
I understand. Mr. Jugan, you probably don't know, correct?
There's been no evidence to support that claim, and this is the first time I'm hearing about it right now.
Well, we could. All right. Well, I'm going to do this. I'm going to grant the injunction for a couple of reasons. One is I do believe there is irreparable harm that was established. I think that the fact that that there is certainly evidence that not only did he win, and I think the defense would agree that he got the most votes in that first election, but that he was sworn in. There is some evidence of that. But furthermore, the irreparable harm, as Mr. Hamilton stated, is he could have voted. He missed out on these votes that obviously his votes should be counted, and they're not. That to me is irreparable harm, if nothing else. Reputation, things like that, business. I don't know that I can jump to that conclusion without more evidence. But I certainly think there was enough to establish irreparable harm. I do believe that the actions taken by the defendant are suspect at best. That's not how an organization is supposed to run. To me, it sounds like the fix was in. Something happened here. They wanted him out, or they wanted her in. Something happened. So I'm going to sign the injunction with the following caveat. This has to be on a fast track because, I'm not going to, I'm leaving the bench, so I'm not going to be dealing with this, but certainly this injunction could be lifted. I think obviously there's going to have to be some discovery done that might convince the next Judge Groner screwed up, should not have signed the injunction, because here's the deposition testimony of certain key people, and perhaps the injunction will get lifted. This is a mess. This is really a mess. I don't know why we just can't temporarily put both of these people there, right? That would solve the problem, at least initially, that we put both of those people as voting members. Can that happen? Then I wouldn't have to sign the injunction, at least until you figure out what's going on here, because, I'm going to put him back on and remove her, and that's just going to cause all kinds of problems, probably an appeal. And I don't want to make things worse, but I do feel there's an injustice here. And I think that plaintiff's met his burden. And really caught between a rock and a hard place, gentlemen. And I think without some discovery, we're all guessing as to what happened. And that's not good. But I do have enough information here that, in my opinion, he won the election and there was no basis to do another election. There just isn't. And the actions by the defendant didn't help. Had they explained it, maybe we wouldn't be here, but there is no explanation. There never has been an explanation.
Your Honor,
And this idea that it had to be, they wanted to do it other than in person, I don't buy that at all. There's no basis for that. So I'll sign the injunction. I'm going to put them back in there and remove whoever won that second election. And I'm sure the appellate courts will be hearing from you guys.
And Judge, can I just clarify? You had spoke about the finding of harm, and I just wanted to be clear that Mr. Collins's vote would have been one of 47 other votes on
So
the
what?
board of directors.
So what? It's not only a vote, talking to people, changing their votes. I mean, he was, according to Mr. Hamilton, as an officer of the court, sworn in. He should have had that opportunity. And so you've made your record. You can make more of a record if you want. I don't care. This is a tough one, but it's just taking everything in totality. We're missing something here. And eventually you'll get to the bottom of it, Mr. Hamilton, and maybe you, Mr. Jugan, but at this point, something doesn't smell right. Something doesn't seem right here. And there's nothing in the defense that gives me an adequate explanation as to why he was not allowed to sit. I don't buy it. And so the court's gonna remove whoever's there and put back Mr. Collins, and we'll sign an order to that effect and I'm gonna give you a very quick date in January, because obviously, Mr. Jugan, you want to get to the next judge so you can right the wrong. Right, Mr. Jugan?
Yes, Your Honor.
I know. Well, I may not be wrong, Mr. Jugan. You never know. Might be right. You never know. Week of January 9th. I assume, the first week judge, it'll be hard to get a judge, but just tell me a day you want to come back.
Your Honor, I do just want to apprise the court. I am currently scheduled for 2 jury trials